Hello and welcome to my video lecture on a couple of functions that are going to help us check variable values and see if variables have been set, whether they're empty, or whether they're actually a number or not. So here we are. We've got our index PHP file. We've got our PHP section up on top, our HTML section on the bottom to do our display for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in another, copy this down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a test. And we're going to echo whether or not first name is set. Right? So we've got the isset function. We're inside a little PHP block. And we're going to pass in first name. Then what we're expecting is that echo will tell us true or false whether or not first name has been set. So let's save that. This is what the file would look like in the browser prior to that change. And we had a fatal error on that line. So we go here, probably because we don't have our semicolon. So let's try that again. Nope, still doesn't like that. Undefined function is set. Doesn't like our is set function. Oh, and that's because there's no underscore. Look at that. All right, so we use is set, and look at that, it turns blue. So we're hoping that it's good now. Almost as bad as me leaving semicolons out. So now I come here and I get a 1. So now we know that it's not really a true or false necessarily that gets returned, but a value. True, false is basically anything that comes back as a 0. True is any non-zero number. So in this case, since the 1 came back, that is essentially a true, which tells us that that variable is set. So we can come in here and let's do a little manipulation. Let's create another variable and we'll call it junk. And we'll leave it just like that, and then we'll test to see if junk has been set. And then we'll save that. Go back to our browser window, we'll run it, and we get nothing back. So we checked for is set, and we check to see if junk has been set. We don't get anything back. So let's see if we could just comment this out altogether and see what happens when we do that. So we'll save that, go back, still nothing. So the is set function will not work on a variable unless one, it's there, and whether or not it's been set to a value. So let's do this. Let's set it equal to an empty string. All right, so we'll save that. So if junk is an empty string, that means it has been set. At least it's been set to an empty string. So now we go back here and let's see if we can set it to a null. So if we set it to null and then we save that, let's see what the isset function does with that. Doesn't come back with anything. So we're finding out a lot about the isset function and what it does and how it reacts to the variable being an empty string or null or actually not being set. Let's see what happens when we use the empty function. So we use the empty function, and we'll use that to test junk again. And we'll set junk equal to junk. Oop, we want to do that. He's just putting apostrophes all over the place for me. You gotta love it. So let's try to help. So now we're going to see if junk is empty. So we're going to save that change. We'll run that. And we get nothing back. So let's do this. Let's see if we put an empty string in there, what happens when we call empty. Empty tells us that, yep, indeed, that is empty. So we go back here. We say, all right, what happens when that gets a null? We'll save that. Check that. Null is the same as empty. So empty is going to react to empty strings. Empty is going to react to nulls, but empty reacts differently when there's actually a value in there. The last one we want to play with is whether or not something's numeric. So here we have a function that does have an underscore. Now we're going to check to see if it is numeric. So first of all, we'll leave it at null, and we'll see how what is numeric does when a variable gets passed in when it's null. It gets a fatal error. So something has to be passed into is numeric in order for it to work. So you can't pass in a null. Let's see what happens when we pass in an empty string. Save that. Run that. Again, doesn't like that either. So an empty string and a null is not something that can be evaluated by numeric. Thanks. One of you should have told me that I spelled it wrong. So numeric is actually the function call. Let's try that again. Let's go back. We'll set this equal to null and see what is numeric does to null. Run that, nothing comes back. So we go back and we say, you know what, we'll make this an empty string. See how it reacts when we pass in an empty string. Run that, nothing. So now we're going to change this to something. Let's change it to junk. So I'm going to pass in a string to is numeric and see what it does with that. We run that, nothing comes back. So then we'll see if we send in an integer, what happens. There you go. Yes, indeed, it is an integer. And let's do one other. Let's pass in a double and see if numeric still likes doubles. And when we refresh that, it likes doubles as well. So there you go. Those are the different reactions we have to the function calls that check variable values. We want to see if it's set, whether or not it's empty, or whether or not it is numeric. And you can see what happens based on whether or not it's true or it's false. And that is the end of my video presentation based on the is numeric, empty, and is set functions in PHP. And now you can use them in your code.